The movie begins by showing this regular guy named Hutch Mansell. He's got a normal life with a wife named Becca, and they've got 2 kids. Hutch works at this not-so-exciting job at a metal-making place that his father-in-law, Eddie, owns. His marriage isn't going too well, and his job is kind of boring. One night, though, things get real crazy. These 2 robbers show up at Hutch's house, both packing guns. You'd think he'd call the cops or something, but nope. For some weird reason, Hutch lets them grab some cash from the place. Now, here's where it gets even weirder. His older son, Blake, sneaks up on one of the robbers and catches him. But Hutch, instead of going all-action hero on them, tells Blake to just let the robbers go. And before they go, one of those bad guys punches Blake in the face. What about Hutch's reaction? Not what you'd expect from a dad. After that, everyone thinks Hutch is a total flop. Becca and Blake are super disappointed. They see him as this weak, scaredy cat who can't even protect his own family. Word about what happened spreads like wildfire in the neighborhood and at work. People start making fun of him, saying he's too spineless to stand up to the robbers, even after what they did to poor Blake. Now Charlie, who's Hutch's brother-in-law, was pretty let down by Hutch too. So Charlie does something unexpected. He hands Hutch a gun and tells him to use it to protect his family. Later on, Hutch has a chat with Eddie, his father-in-law. They talk about how Hutch wants to buy Eddie's company. But Eddie isn't too happy with the price Hutch is offering, so he asks for a better deal. Feeling all stressed out because of what happened and the people around him getting on his case, Hutch decides to reach out to his adoptive brother, Harry. He's got this secret radio hidden in his office, and he uses it to spill the beans about the robbery that went down the night before. Hutch explains that he didn't fight off the robbers because he figured they were in a tight spot, maybe struggling with money problems or something urgent. You see, Hutch had a hunch that those burglars who showed up at his place weren't hardcore criminals. They only took a bit of loose change and didn't even have loaded guns. That's why Hutch didn't put up a fight and let them grab whatever small change they could find. So, after work, Hutch decided to pay a visit to his dad, David, who was staying at a nursing home. When he got back home, he stood outside for a moment, just watching his wife, Becca, and their 2 kids, Blake and Sammy. But Becca and Blake, still pretty mad at him for acting like a scaredy cat, didn't pay him much attention when he came in and said hi. Now, Sammy, Hutch's daughter, needed some help finding her missing kitty cat bracelet. She thought those thieves might have taken it during their little visit. Hutch didn't say a word, but he rushed over to his dad's place in the nursing home and borrowed his old gun. Then he remembered the tattoo he saw on one of the thief's wrists and started checking out tattoo parlors. At one of these places, people kinda looked down on Hutch at first, but then this one guy walked up and thanked him. It changed how the others there saw him, and they started showing some respect. Hutch eventually tracked down where those thieves lived and made them give back his daughter's bracelet by scaring them a bit. But suddenly, he heard a baby crying inside their place, and it hit him that these 2 were struggling with a sick baby. Hutch felt real guilty and walked away, banging the wall in frustration with himself. On his way back home on the bus, things got wild. A bunch of drunk troublemakers got on the bus and started bothering passengers, especially this young woman. Hutch, wanting to let off some steam, asked the bus driver to stop, and he took care of those thugs, making it seem like he was protecting the lady from their harassment. When Hutch got back home all battered, Becca, his wife, saw him and took care of his bruises with all her heart. She stayed by his side until he fell asleep. Hutch realized that he hadn't really talked to his family, much since the whole robbery thing, so he tried to reconnect with them. Now, the scene changes and we meet this guy named Yulian Kuznetsov. He's a Russian mob boss, and he's having a grand old time at a nightclub. Yulian runs this shady business where other Russian mafia folks trust him with their dirty money, so it doesn't get caught by the law. But some of Yulian's mafia pals start doubting whether he's really up to the task. They're talking about it among themselves. Out of the blue, Yulian grabs some random guy from the nightclub and right there in front of everyone, cuts the guy's throat. He's trying to show everyone that he's a real dangerous dude, and they better not mess with him or else. After that gruesome display, Yulian gets a call. Turns out, his little brother Teddy is in a coma at the hospital. He got a serious beatdown from some guy, and who is none other than Hutch, the same guy from earlier. Yulian and his crew rush to the hospital to find out who this Hutch guy is. They grill Teddy's pals for info, and one of them manages to grab Hutch's business card and gives it to Julian. So, the next morning rolls around, and Hutch is having breakfast with his family. All seems calm, but then he gets a call from Harry. Harry's giving him the lowdown on that bus brawl from last night, where Hutch gave a beating to some folks, including the brother of a big-time criminal boss. Harry convinces Hutch to meet with the barber to learn more about this super dangerous Russian mob boss. Hutch goes to see the barber and gets the scoop on Yulian Kuznetsov and all the shady stuff he's been up to in the criminal world. Hutch doesn't seem to regret what he did, and he's ready to face whatever risks and consequences come his way. On the flip side, Yulian decides to dig up info on Hutch using that business card. He brings in a female informant to do the job, but what she finds out about Hutch is pretty scary. Hutch has a history of some pretty brutal stuff on his missions. He's like a pro at taking out targets in a really rough way. The informant spills the beans to Yulian and decides to keep her distance because she's worried about her own safety. Later that night, as payback for Hutch beating up his little brother, Yulian sends his right-hand man, Pavel, and his crew to Hutch's house. Hutch catches wind of this and quickly hides his family in the basement. He tells them to stay cool and not dial 911. So, when Yulian's guys busted into Hutch's place, things got real ugly. Hutch fought back hard and took down most of Yulian's crew in a brutal way. But then, out of nowhere, Pavel sneaked up and shocked Hutch from behind, knocking him out cold. They snatched him up and tried to take him away. But Hutch woke up and somehow managed to free his hands from the handcuffs. Locked in the trunk of a car, he found a fire extinguisher and used it to blind the driver. The car crashed, and it was game over for Pavel and the rest of the crew. They didn't make it. So, Hutch goes back home and gets his family out of the basement. They walk into a scene straight out of a horror movie, with bodies all over and the house in chaos. Before sending his family to safety, Hutch promises his wife that he'll handle everything and asks her to stay put with the kids. Hutch makes sure to grab all his stuff, including a bunch of gold bullion he got from some past job. Then he sets fire to his own house to wipe out any evidence. Now, here's the kicker. Yulian didn't just go after Hutch and his family. He also sent two of his toughest henchmen to take out David, Hutch's old man in the nursing home. But the old guy turned out to be quite the fighter and gave Yulian's henchmen a beating they didn't see coming. So, after all that craziness, Hutch goes to Eddie and buys his company using the gold bullion he had. But Charlie, thinking Hutch is messing with his family, tries to attack him. Hutch, though, manages to take him down without too much trouble. Now, Yulian figures out that Hutch wiped out Pavel and his crew. He's not happy about it, not one bit. Yulian tells his guys to hunt down Hutch. On the other side, Hutch is getting ready for Yulian's attack, especially after Yulian went after his family. Hutch knows where Yulian keeps all that dirty money for his business. He heads over there, takes out the guys guarding the place, and sets fire to the mafia's cash stash. He also burns up Yulian's fancy art collection. Without any hesitation, Hutch marches into Yulian's nightclub and faces him alone. He's got a claymore mine with him, and he threatens Yulian with it. Yulian tells everyone to clear out and sit down facing Hutch. Hutch, all cool and collected, offers a deal to make peace. He says he won't kill Yulian as long as Yulian stays away from him and his family. Hutch also mentions that he torched all the mafia's money Yulian was holding onto and suggests Yulian find a safer job. After that, Hutch leaves still carrying the claymore mine and waits in his car. But you know, Yulian's not the type to make peace with someone who hurt his brother. Once Hutch takes off, Yulian orders all his men to go after him. It's far from over. So, Yulian and his crew chased Hutch down to the factory he now owned, the same place he got from Eddie. But David and Harry suddenly show up out of nowhere to help Hutch out. They use all sorts of weapons and clever traps that Hutch had set up ahead of time. David, he's this retired FBI agent who used to be a real tough cookie on the job, and Harry turns out to be a trained ex-soldier. These three manage to take down all of Yulian's guys, except for Yulian himself. Even though Harry gets shot in the shoulder, they don't give up. They run out of bullets, but Hutch comes charging at Yulian with a claymore mine attached to a piece of bulletproof glass, and boom. Yulian is toast. After making sure that David and Harry got away safely, Hutch turns himself in when the cops show up. He gets questioned by a man and a woman who look totally shocked when they see all the bodies and how brutal things got. Hutch, the only one there, admits to killing them all. But then, something strange happens. Both of Hutch's interrogators get a call at the same time. Their faces change and they can't believe it. They look at Hutch like he's some kind of enigma. Before they let him go, they ask him, "Who are you?" Hutch just says, "I'm nobody." See, Hutch Mansell used to be this auditor, like the last person any organization wanted to see at their door. But what most people didn't know was that he was also a hitman working for the intelligence services. He once spared a guy's life on a job, and a year later, that guy was living a happy life with his new family. Seeing that, Hutch wanted the same thing deep down. So, against his boss's wishes, he decided to retire from the hitman life. So, fast forward 3 months, Hutch is out house hunting with Becca when he gets this mysterious call. They're telling him they still need his services. In a little scene that pops up during the credits, we see Harry and David driving to some secret place in an RV, packed with guns. Now the big question is, will Hutch go back to his hitman gig? Will he finally spill the beans to his family about his real job? We don't know if there will be a sequel or not, but one thing's for sure, this movie has some seriously awesome action scenes, just like John Wick. So the moral of the story is sometimes it's better to be a nobody than to be somebody you're not. And remember, never judge a dad by his action hero potential.